If you're listening on audio now, it's time to give Bloom his flowers. Hey, we don't fully know what this means yet, but a big, basically, deep dive from Katie Wu was posted this morning. Derek Gould of St. Louis Dispatch has done some stuff. We've been talking to our friend Jeff Jones for a while. Lots of like little rumors and tidbits for a long time about what's going to happen with the Cardinals front office this offseason, but it feels like we got some major clarity on some sweeping changes, in the words of Katie Wu, coming to the Cardinals front office and organization as a whole this offseason. We're going to react piece by piece to the story and all the things coming out regarding the Cardinals on this episode of D on the Cards. Andrew, I guess I didn't really acknowledge, but this is an emergency pod, right? We just went live yesterday. We were talking about how Monday we're probably going to preview what we think is going to happen. And now we have a lot of clarity on what's potentially going to happen, or at least more clarity than we had before. Still a lot of speculation involved. Still need to hear some stuff on Monday. But kind of want to go piece by piece through this incredible piece from Katie Wu over The Athletic. If you haven't read it already, you need to go read it. I'm telling you, it's worth a year-long subscription just for that piece itself. It's probably the best and most candid stuff we've gotten about the Cardinals from inside the Cardinals in a long time. Again, there's people around the game, there's people around outside the organization that have said these things for a long time. But today we got some quotes. Well, here we'll start with the quotes that lead off the story because I think they're incredible. This is from one team employee. He goes, he or she goes, "We're in trouble. This is not easily fixable within the next year or the year after. This is going to take some time. I don't know how it was this expletive." Basically screwed up so bad over the last few years. All the people she's talked to have described the outdated player development model. One executive or one person within the organization said people used to always ask the minors, do you care about winning or do you care about developing players? The answer would always be, we develop winning players. And then they said, we no longer develop winning players. So Andrew, just the lead off before we dive into all this, this is stuff that we've known for a little while, right? We've talked about this in the podcast. Other people have talked about it. People would say some of us, or me, maybe not you, but me, have been behind on this and that we haven't said it soon enough. But like, it's clear for at least months now, if not over a year, this stuff's been pumped, and in years for some people. But now it's coming from within the Cardinals. Andrew, what is your reaction to hearing basically this very candid, obviously a lot of anonymous sources here, but you kind of have to be to keep your job after a piece like this. But you're hearing this kind of talk come from within the Cardinals. What was your reaction when you read the piece this morning? Because I remember you woke up, you're like, whoa, what just happened? And I'm like writing all this stuff and like, dude, we need to go live.
Yeah, I woke up pretty late because I slept pretty late yesterday because I was watching the Dodgers game and watching them party. But we're not going to be seeing any of that in St. Louis anytime soon, unfortunately, it sounds like. But yeah, I woke up to a bunch of messages of Josh being like, "Oh, let's go live," and Sandy was like reacting to stuff, and he's like, "I have class, I can't go live." And it's like, "Oh, well, just skip class, Sandy. This is a once in a lifetime thing." Anyway, it was like very like I was like, what could possibly have happened today? Like the end of season press conference is on Monday. Like, why are we going live on Friday? But I read Katie's article. Very good, very in-depth stuff. Definitely go check it out after this. But yeah, it sounds like Chaim Bloom is getting ready to take over in a larger role later this offseason. I don't know if he's going to take over immediately as president of baseball operations. It sounds like that's probably not going to happen. But it seems like the Cardinals are pivoting more towards a player development-based model. They haven't invested in their farm system, in their development system for the last couple of years. Who knows how long, but to hear this coming from an organization that's usually pretty close to the chest with a lot of these things, and the employees are speaking up. I don't know who this is. Like, this could be someone way up in the front office. This could be someone who works at the hot dog stand. We don't know.
I think it's above the hot dog stand.
Well, yeah, but like, we don't know where this is coming from, but the fact that anonymous sources are now speaking out and willing to talk about just how bad things have gotten in the last couple of years is pretty indicative of where this organization is at. Hopefully Chaim Bloom can save it. I think Jeff Jones is spot on with those analysts from Boston that are going to come over here. It seems like those guys probably did end up in the Cardinals organization, and I guess we'll see what happens. But I'm really excited for what Chaim Bloom has this offseason. Maybe they announce a succession plan that he'll take over in 2026. We'll see. 2025, Mo might still be it, but I think Chaim Bloom is pretty clearly going to move into that role. Obviously, we don't know until Monday, but seems like everything's pointing in that direction, which I'm really excited about. I was really scared that Chaim Bloom would leave the organization or not want to take on as big a role this offseason, but now it seems like we have confirmation that that's happening, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, she did say in the piece, and we'll put Bloom to the side for a second. He'll kind of be the next big kind of nugget we'll talk about after this next point. But yes, Bloom is already a full-time member of the organization now, which was even a question mark that we've had for a while. Is like, is he just an advisor? Is he going to kind of step away? Like, does he want to do this? Again, we've all inferred he's going to take on a larger role, but now it's been confirmed. Before we talk about Bloom, though, because even though it does impact this next point, I think it's interesting. The next thing to acknowledge is, to your point, Andrew, not only are people within the organization pointing out how major these issues are, we're going to talk about some of the changes we know are starting to come. But also, this is from Katie's piece, though they don't plan on tanking, people briefed on the Cardinals' plans say the organization is preparing to shift to focus on upgrading the minor leagues and player development department, even if it means going down a seldom path taken in baseball mad St. Louis, accepting the possibility of not putting the major league team in position to contend. Basically, a rebuild or a glorified retool. And so I want to do a little bit. I think JP Hill over at Viva Alberto's did something like this recently. And I thought it was a really helpful way for him to kind of differentiate like a rebuild from a tank, because we've used the language here of a retool needs to happen in St. Louis, but I think it's fair to say there's something in between a retool and a full-on tank job that like the Astros did and stuff like that the Cardinals need here, and which I would call maybe a rebuild, right? That the Cardinals can't turn this around in one off season. They can't turn it around in one season, really. This is probably 2026, 2027 that you're hoping this club is back to. Doesn't mean they can't be a 500 team next year, but to be like a powerhouse again or to be a true contender, it's going to take a little while. And so they're embracing this idea of a rebuild, reallocating resources or allocating more resources to the minor leagues, to player development. And that's where Chaim Bloom's role will come in. But we'll talk about that in a second. But Andrew, just right off the top, I think for me, I'm really encouraged that they're going this direction, because in a little bit, we can talk about how the resources have been lacking for the minor leagues and that there is a potential there's a concern I have here where they might be saying they might say they're like, who was it? Brandon Kiley, I think today brought this up. There's really interesting. Like, you can, even though we don't know the exact numbers of payrolls metrics, we kind of have an idea of what they spend on payroll. We have no idea how much you spend on player development. So you could tell us that you're taking away $30 million on the payroll and not actually invest it fully in player development, right? Or like you invest some of it, but you save money too, right? So that side of it, whatever. But yeah, Kareem's gonna hop on, or Kareem will be in the prospect pod this week or whatever, at least to acknowledge some of the stuff. But yeah, Kareem wanted to put some respect on Katie Wu for this piece because it seriously was legendary. So great stuff from Katie. Hopefully we'll get her on here soon too to talk more about that. But I'm really encouraged though that they are going to be diving into the player development minor league overhaul, because that's what the best organizations do. And that doesn't mean they need to go. Again, we don't know what they're going to do in the next 3-4 years. But if 3 or 4 years from now, they overhaul their player development 2 years from now, and they're ready to contend again, and they don't invest more in payroll and keep investing in player development, that's a major issue. But I don't mind them right now saying, hey, we need to fix this if we're going to be the organization we want to be again. And so I'm good with this. I'm good with them going toward a rebuild, retool, if it means there's a long-term vision and plan in place. Andrew, are you encouraged by that? Are you interested in that? Are you cautious about it? Like, what are your feelings about hearing this idea that they're basically embracing this mini rebuild?
I mean, that's disappointing because I was hoping this team would be in contention next year, but realistically, I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't know if they're not going to increase payroll. There's not very many ways this team can be fixed for next year. Like, you look at the roster, they need a productive bat in the middle of their lineup. They're not bringing back Goldschmidt, sounds like, from all of this. Like, I feel like that's pretty much confirmed that won't be a part of this team next year. But I'm a little bit disappointed because I think there's a path to retooling the minor league system and also remaining somewhat competitive next year. It seems like every year the Cardinals set out their goal and it's like, let's just get into the playoffs and see what happens. Anything can happen in the playoffs. And it seems like they fall short of that a lot of the times, right? Like, sometimes they get there, sometimes they get to the playoffs, and sometimes they just don't. And they don't really reach the expectations they set for themselves. So if you're telling me the expectation is that they're going to put less emphasis on winning, it just doesn't bode well for next year. I feel like next year could be really bad. And that's really disheartening because I feel like there's a lot of pieces on this roster that can be really good and help this team get to the playoffs. But I guess if that's the direction they're going, it's better for long term. I would prefer this over they just keep signing Lynn and Gibson or like those kinds of players and patching their holes with middling free agents and just not really addressing the concerns that are like, hey, we can't actually develop these players. And I think over the last couple of years, it's kind of like you can kind of see past a lot of the holes because they basically stole two Hall of Famers from NL West teams for nothing. And that's kind of what's been carrying your organization is those
Yeah.
two players. Like they didn't like you're telling me the Dodgers couldn't have put together a better package for Nolan Arenado? They just didn't call, right? Like it's not like the
Well,
Cardinals.
the Rockies didn't want to trade him in the division too.
Okay,
So that was
that's
part of
fair.
it.
Or like just a team like that. Like you think another team couldn't have given up more than Austin Gomber? Like I don't think that's realistic, right? Like there's another team that would have paid his whole salary and given you a top 100 prospect for Nolan Arenado. Like it's not really unquestionable there. And you're kind of looking at those two trades carrying your entire organization. The rest of the contributing pieces just haven't put it together, and it's I don't know. Like you're kind of seeing all of their like work that they didn't put in finally come to light because you're not going to fleece a team for a superstar every other year. Like it's just not going to happen. Like I don't think other teams are that dumb anymore because like the Rockies got so much flack for trading Arenado for nothing and Goldie to a lesser extent. But like now that those two players are towards the end of their careers, out of their prime, what do you have left? You don't really have much at all. And yeah, it's disappointing, but it makes sense.
Well, there's also a reason those trades haven't happened. Like you haven't seen other organizations pull off. Besides, well, actually, you have seen Mookie Betts from, and we'll get to Chaim Bloom in a second, from the Boston to the Dodgers. But it's because the Cardinals took advantage of a very unique scenario where Paul Goldschmidt wanted to go to a team like the St. Louis Cardinals and was in a contract year, and so other teams knew, well, he might not sign with us, but he'll sign at the Cardinals. So the Cardinals can trade for a guy like that who only has 1 year of control left and not give up a huge package because he's a rental and you have to pay him. Arenado had a no trade clause, and so the only two teams you really want to go to is the Dodgers, who the Rockies like we're not trading with, or the Cardinals. And so basically, he had one team he can go to, is the Cardinals. And so the Cardinals are like, hey, we know we're the only team he wants to go to, so we're not going to give you much for him, and we need you to pay his contract. Again, the Rockies are still dumb for doing it, but like the Cardinals lucked into those situations, and I think it's a great point, Andrew. It's like without those two things, these issues probably become clearer quicker. But when you can get gifted two MVP caliber players, it will you can kind of get through some of these issues for a little bit, but it's starting to crack.
Yeah, and also if your $2 million platoon DH doesn't turn into prime Albert Pujols for half a year.
Also true. Yeah, they lucked into some stuff. Or they had a Yadier Molina who carried the catching for so long and carried this pitching staff, and like now he's not there anymore. Like they just really took advantage, or they really used some things as crutches instead of continuing to invest in the infrastructure around those superstars. And so they didn't make the most of these superstar players they had, right? I think it's fair. Like, again, I've been pretty like, I don't feel like the Juan Soto trade would make sense considering everything that's happened since. And I still feel that way. But at the same time, it's like 2022, you had the team, you had Pujols, Nato, Goldie, you had three basically Hall of Fame level hitters on your team at the same time, and you didn't go all in on that team. Now, maybe to be fair, in the back of their mind is they're like, this is about to fall apart, and so we're going to destroy even more if we were to do something like that. But also at the same time, maybe the best thing would have been go all in on 2022, knowing that this is all about to fall apart anyways. So, anyways, Chaim Bloom. So here's kind of the notes we have on him right now. Bloom has since joined the front office full time. Again, he's been with the organization since last offseason, kind of doing this past offseason, doing an audit of the organization. Now he's with the organization full time in the front office, and he'll be charged with making changes in the Cardinals farm system based on his findings. His first and most pressing task is hiring a new director of player development. Now, for those who are interested to see, like, okay, what does this mean for Mo? Does this mean Bloom is the new Pobo? Not necessarily. Those decisions will okay, so we'll talk about some of the other players that there's some decisions that need to be made with some veterans. And in light of that, Woo talked about how when the Cardinals hired Bloom to be the special advisor and now he's taking on a more significant role, he's probably going to play a role in some of the decisions, not just with player development in the minor leagues, but he's probably going to influence what they're deciding to do at the major league level too, to an extent. But for the most part, his most pressing need and the thing that he has the most extensive background in and the thing that he's been known the best is his player development analytics side of things. And so he's going to continue to do that, and he's going to do it. He's going to start implementing the changes that he's pointed out for the Cardinals this past year. But it's not clear what Bloom's promotion means in terms of being Mozeliak's successor. And we don't really know if that means that's what his future is with the organization. Here's a couple of things I read from it. And then, Andrew, I want to hear kind of your thoughts. It very well could mean that Bloom is the guy in waiting, but in 2025, what his main focus will be is player development in minor leagues, while Mo kind of starts to hand off things to the rest of the organization, starts to hands off things to Bloom. But instead of Bloom also having to figure out the free agents and trades, especially if they're not trying to contend in 2025, then like who they decide to, I mean, like some of that stuff might not matter as much as it would in a typical year. So, like, for his focus and attention to be on the minor leagues, even if he's going to be the next Bobo, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. But I think that where this gets weird is if the Cardinals come to a conclusion, you go to the press conference on Monday and they say, "Hey, Chaim Bloom's taking on a more significant role, player development. John Mozeliak's still the Pobo, but we don't have a plan to tell you yet about who's next." That's where I think things could get really wonky. Now, you don't necessarily need Chaim Bloom to be the Pobo. Like, there are other organizations in baseball who have a more collaborative front office approach. And maybe that's what the Cardinals lean towards. Maybe it's not Chaim Bloom's in charge of everything and like Jamo was, but maybe it's Chaim Bloom and Randy Flores and another outside hire or something like that kind of all together lead this organization, but then they have their specialties and the things they're good at. Because Randy Flores is really freaking good at scouting, but guess what? They can't develop the players he scouts. So it's like, oh, maybe you get someone who's really good at player development to pair with the guy who's really good at scouting, and maybe you get a guy who's really good at the baseball management things at the top. And it's like, wow, what a good team we have here. That could be what they go toward, but we don't know yet. All we know, which is still an improvement, is that Chaim Bloom is taking over player development and everything related to overseeing the farm system. Andrew, when you hear that Bloom is kind of going to be utilized for his strength, what do you feel about that? But then also this idea that he, at least as of today, I mean, Monday we could hear differently, but as of today, it sounds like John Mozeliak staying in his role, which we all knew he wasn't going to be fired, but we didn't know if he would be fully Pobo or not. And then also, we don't know who's the successor yet. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's still early, right? Like the offseason hasn't even started yet, so I'm not really that worried about it. We'll find out at the press conference. But it's reassuring to me that Bloom already has this role when all this stuff is coming out about just how bad the team has been with development over the last couple of years. And I don't really, if they're punting on the season for next year, I don't really care who is in charge. Like, who knows? Maybe Mo will go out with like, he'll have an Albert Pujols style second half, and he'll go back to being prime Mo and make a bunch of savvy moves in the offseason, get us back to contention while Bloom fixes the front office. I don't know. You can press the button if you want. I don't really care.
I know you always press it on me, so I got.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't really care who's in charge of the team if they're not trying to compete. That's fine. I would like them to announce a succession plan. It seems like that's the likely next step because Bloom has been a successful president of baseball operations in the past. No matter what Red Sox fans will tell you, I disagree with them.
Well, a lot of them have to be backtracking on that. Like recently, like Baseball America has put Roman Anthony as the best prospect in baseball, has talked about the Red Sox system being really strong. And you look at all the comments under it, and it's all these Red Sox fans being like, Bloom did that. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're because that's the thing's been pointed out about Bloom, that he was basically the Henrys and the Fenway sports group that run the organization for the Red Sox said, hey, Bloom, come in here and cut down our league high payroll, trade away our future Hall of Famer, also attach David Price's contract to him to get rid of that money, cut as much money as possible. Don't spend more. Hey, also, we have the worst farm system in baseball. Could you fix that too? And they gave
Yeah.
him 3 years, and the first year was COVID. And then the Boston fans, which is fair. I mean, they were like, "What the heck is happening? We're not winning. This is bad." And then the ownership, instead of sticking to the course because this is what they told Bloom to do, was like, "Hey, Bloom, you suck." And he's like, "What? You told me to do this." And then they let him go. And it's like, I'm not saying Bloom made mistakes. We can talk about that. We will talk about it. We're going to talk about it more and more as we go. But Bloom was dealt a crappy hand. And if you look, like, go and do some research about how national people feel behind Bloom, there's not many people who are like, what are the Cardinals doing and bringing in that Bloom guy? A lot of them were like, that's a really interesting move. That makes a lot of sense because they know Bloom was dealt a crappy hand in Boston. So, anyways, I just think that's something that annoys me is people just look at the Mookie Betts trade and look at his time there. And it's like he freaking brought Boston to an ALCS while they told him to cut payroll and build the farm system. And he somehow won one of the years when he was there. So, and it wasn't a disaster either. Like, they weren't the worst team in baseball. They were like a 500 team. Anyways.
Yeah. I'm hopefully, like, maybe he'll fix the minor league system this year, and then next year he'll be tasked with fixing the minor league system again, and then just moving into a larger role, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe if the Cardinals are going to move off from Gray and Contreras and Arenado, which we'll get into later, they're not trying to contend next year, are going to really cut payroll, which would be pretty shocking, but also not too surprising. Maybe they'll ask him to look around different farm systems and be like, which prospects do you want to add to this farm system and to build for the future? And, like, that's something that he could definitely help out with this offseason. But yeah, I'm perfectly happy with him in the role that he's going to be in. Hopefully fix the Cardinals farm system. And yeah, I mean, he was one of the ones who was doing the audits of the farm system. So maybe he found something that was seriously wrong with it. And hey, maybe he was the anonymous source. Like, I don't know. That would be
you never know. Hey, Kyle Reese pointed this out on Twitter today, and I thought it was really interesting. Do you remember at Blocker Day when Kyle asked Mo about some of the criticisms he's gotten about player development, and Mo was like really testy about it. He seemed really offended when he was asked about former players and people who used to be involved with the organization calling it out, and he was like, "Yeah, it's easy for them to say when they're gone, and all these situations are unique, and blah blah blah." And it's like, this hit piece was basically all about how your player development sucks. Really interesting. Also, the Gary LaRock quote it was the thing that was emphasized at the beginning of the piece is that we develop winning players is a Gary LaRock saying. So, just saying, he wasn't mentioned with that, but that's what people outside the organization have said things about what Gary LaRock says, and he goes around and just says we develop winning players. Anyways, it's funny. It's just funny to me. But yeah, player development's broken. That's the next thing we need to get into. So some of the things they kind of talked about. So one staffer talked about how it's a broken system. Our system is broken all the way down. How do you get there? I don't know. It's not just about the money being spent there. I mean, this is about the money being spent there, but it's also about the number of staffing they have. So they failed to hire a lot of like full-time roaming coordinators. Here's some interesting numbers. So the Phillies have 14 full-time field staff members. The Mets have 15, including coordinators catching, base running, infield, and outfield. The Brewers have 17 staffers. By contrast, the Cardinals do not have any infield, outfield, or catching coordinators, nor do they imply a full-time roving instructors or full-time coordinator position in Latin America. Instead, a small crew led by Jose Oquendo oversees the entire operation. Yeah, gosh. And she mentioned a couple other names who kind of help with it. Basically, and we'll talk about the resources lacking here too. What this has talked about a lot or in this piece is the Cardinals basically started saying, hey, our player development sucks, so we need to spend more on payroll, which is kind of funny because everyone talks about how the Cardinals don't spend enough on payroll. And again, the DeWitts determine how much money Mo has to use, right? So like that's an issue. But what Mo did with the money is he said, hey, I'm going to increase payroll and I'm going to decrease how much we spend on player development, and we're going to lag behind in these areas. And they've basically went from being cutting edge front of all baseball. And part of that's because they used to have some incredible staff in the front office that have left to work for the Houston Astros or the Baltimore Orioles and the Milwaukee Brewers. Like, there are great former front office members who've gone on to do things in other places. And now the Cardinals, instead of kind of making up for that and kind of getting back to the cutting edges, they've shrunk and shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, whether it's the amount of staff or the amount of money to spend there or the technology they spend there. And instead, they invested in Lance Lynn at $10 million, thinking it'll fix it because they can't develop a pitcher. So they're going to sign Miles Michaelis instead, or they sign Steven Matz or whatever. That's ridiculous. That is insane to me that it's fallen behind that far. I like literally laughed out loud when I read that Mo decided to spend more money on payroll, which it's kind of funny because we all talk about how they want, like pretty much everyone talks about the Cardinals should spend more money. And technically Mo did, but the DeWitts didn't give him, like, instead of the DeWitts giving him more money to spend on payroll, he just took the money he was spending in other places and put it toward the payroll to appease people. I mean, it's interesting. This whole thing seems messed up and broken to me. So, I mean, it would be really interesting to see Bloom take over for a little bit, to bring in some more staffing to the minor league levels, bring in some more major league staff. Again, we can talk about in a minute whether they need to let go of some major league staff, but we talked about this last offseason too. Not only do they maybe need to change some major league staff, they need to add more positions. They are woefully behind the rest of baseball right now when it comes to stuff like that. She pointed out Ivan Herrera as someone who, basically someone in the piece said he's the person who's been most affected by the lack of coaching and coordinators relating to the organization because he's not gotten the proper training and the proper help to develop as a catcher. And they relied on Yachty for so long to do those things that they've sucked as an organization at teaching their catchers how to be good at stuff like this. Walker, they've talked that people like cringed when trying to talk about how Walker's development as an outfielder because they need to have someone who is coaching him and walking with him throughout the minor leagues to do this well. People talk about how Willie McGee is supposed to do that. It's like, sure, if you're with the big league club, Willie McGee can do that. But part of the role of a roaming coordinator, which again, this is why Katie's piece is so good. She goes into depth on it. She says that like the roaming coordinator brings accountability to all levels of the minor leagues because they bounce through AA, AAA, single A, high A, low A, the rookie ball, and they talk to all these people and make sure they're all being consistent in what they're teaching. They're all doing it to the best of their abilities. It's not that just they need to hire John Smith to coach Jordan Walker. They need to hire John Smith to coach Jordan Walker and make sure the guys at AAA are coaching him the right way, AA are coaching him the right way, high A, low A. And they have just, to save some money on the bottom line, they don't do that anymore. Major issues across the board. And so I'm when people maybe get frustrated that payroll goes down this year and that they might not be winning next year, again, I'm also going to be frustrated by that stuff. But if that means they're going to fix some of these issues, that's how we don't see a Jordan Walker flame out, right? That's how we don't see the next Dylan Carl. This is how we make sure JJ Weatherholt, Quinn Matthews, Tink Hence, whoever they draft in 2025, this is how we make sure players like this end up succeeding, is by putting them in the best possible position to succeed. Cardinals haven't done that. Now, before we continue, because I think we should talk about Michael Girsch kind of got outed a little bit here. Then we'll talk about the players traded side of things, MLB staff. But we want to thank one of our sponsors, 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles, located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. They're open 10 to 5 Monday through Fridays and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. And they buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards. So if you want to up your sports cards collections, if you want to buy packs, box sets, special single cards, all that kind of stuff around the league, go check out 314 Sports Cards. Andrew's always got new stuff from there. He's got that Victor Scott card. He's a cool Yamamoto card, the two-way Mesa Win card, lots of fun stuff. So, yeah, definitely go check out 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Many of you
would be interested in developing a two-way player. Should I ask him that at Blogger Day?
You should someday, but I don't think he will. We'll see though. Who knows? But yes, check out 314 Sports Cards Collectibles. Many of you already do. And so let us know in the chat if you go there at all, and definitely let them know if you end up showing up that we sent you there. Again, they're awesome. They've done a lot of good for us, and Andrew has a ton of fun going in there. I need to get in there sometime soon. I've got my own sports card stuff starting to collect up again, so it's a lot of fun. And then SeatGeek, again, there's not any Cardinal games to go to down the stretch, but if you want to go to college football, NBA, NFL, get some tickets for next year, go to a concert, something like that down the stretch, you can use our code NewtNews over at SeatGeek to save $20 off your first purchase of $50 or more. So you mentioned, Andrew, the Jeff Jones thing about the analytics department. I think it's super interesting that Katie kind of talked about how Michael Girsch, who is the guy who kind of oversees analytics for the Cardinals, among other things, has kind of, fallen the wayside a little bit. And he's kind of one of the guys who like has missed the ball on player evaluations. Like they kept Tyler O'Neill and they kept Dylan Carlson while trading Randy Rosarina and Adolfo Garcia and stuff like that. And she kind of painted that corner into Michael Girsch's territory, that he's the kind of guy who's making some of these evaluations and projections. Oh, yeah, Cody. I intentionally didn't mention Caleb Williams, but yes, Caleb Williams. They should hire Caleb Williams. I kind of think we're going to hear Girsch is gone on Monday. I think that's one of the changes we're going to hear. Especially, and I think it's really interesting, to your point, that we saw some of those openings in the analytics department in Boston, and maybe there's some of Chaim's guys coming over here. Maybe that's kind of what Chaim's role is like he's hiring the next and maybe it's a Chaim Flores thing. Maybe basically Chaim is taking on that Girsch role, and then to an extent, but maybe with more of a little bit of a player development focus. And then he's rehiring Gary LaRocque's role, and then Flores keeps doing the scouting. There's some, there's a couple other guys in the front office I'm forgetting right now, even outside of Bloom, Flores, Girsch, and Mo. Anyways, that's really interesting. But Andrew, do you think that we see the Cardinals let go of Michael Girsch after this or at this press conference? Because Girsch is Mo's guy. And so it's like if Mo's on the way out, I don't know. What do you think?
Sure, I don't mind. Like, clean house, get everybody out pretty much, except for Chaim Bloom, maybe Mo. I don't know. I don't really want Mo here next year if I'm being fully honest, but I guess to oversee some of that could be helpful. Yeah, I think that would be great. If we see like this organization seems to be like rotted from the top down, right? You look at some of the organizations across baseball that are having similar struggles as the Cardinals, and they pretty much blame everyone in the front office from the top down. And I feel like that seems fair. Like if Girsch is in charge of analytics, like the Cardinals are one of like two organizations that don't have a true media account. Is that the case still?
Yeah.
And just like they don't look at a lot of these analytics the way that we do, and or the way that like more modern organizations do. And yeah, I feel like it's time to get some people in who have more experience with that. Outside voices, obviously, what we want. So yeah, I'd be happy with it. I don't know if that's going to happen, but sure.
We'll definitely see. Hey, we really appreciate the support so far. Again, if you're watching now, great turnout so far. It's super fun. Subscribe to the channel, helps us out a ton. Like the stream. Again, that helps us out as well. And comment your thoughts as we're going through as well. We want to hear from you. We want to highlight your comments. We want to be engaging with what you're saying as well. So we'll keep going with this. But yeah, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out a ton. But yeah, I think Girsch is on the way out. I think it makes a lot of sense. Hey, even Ipe from his prison cell is telling you to subscribe. So, oh gosh. Anyways, that's bad. We'll keep it moving. Oh man. But last thing on the Girsch thing is, Wu said toward the beginning of her piece, quote, representatives of ownership group headed by Chief Executive Officer Bill DeWitt did not respond to the Athletics interview request, but according to people briefed on the situation, the Cardinals intend to take sweeping action, and at least one of those changes has already been made. So, I mean, she could be saying one of those changes has already been made is in Gary LaRocque's retirement, but I think what she's implying there is there's a significant change that's already been decided that has not been announced publicly yet. That's where I think it's the Girsch side of things. Could be other things too. Sweeping changes to me does not say one change. I think there's a lot coming. Now, let's finish with the players potentially being traded. Let's talk about the major league staff. So something really interesting at the end of Katie's piece, which I was like, oh boy, we'll see how people respond to this one. Cause yeah. Anyways, Oli Marmol expected to return for 2025. Not that shocking to me. Might be shocking to other people. Again, I could have seen them removing him or going to someone else. Maybe they bring Albert Pujols onto his staff. I don't know. But she did say they expect to bring back the majority of his staff. So some people she quoted, Danny Descalso signed through 2025. Dusty Blake as well. Papa Warner through 2026. So it sounds like those guys are probably going to stay in place. Now, there are 5 coaches whose contracts are up for negotiation, including hitting coaches Turner Ward and Brandon Allen, game planning coach Packy Elkins, first base coach Stubby Clapp, and assistant pitching coach Julio Rangel. She did say at the end, though, Though the Cardinals are one of the worst offensive teams in the National League, there is mutual interest in retaining all of this year's coaching staff, including the hitting coaches. Oh boy. Oh boy. Tough. Andrew, thoughts?
Yeah, that's not good. I don't know. I
Like,
don't
there's
really know
so
what
much in here. I'm like, finally, and then that.
I'm glad that Ollie's staying. I feel like that
Me
makes
too.
sense. I like Ollie. I know we get a lot of flack for that, but whatever.
Yeah.
I don't
Kareem,
get.
good point from Kareem. New Pobo should be able to pick their coaching staff.
Well, yeah, but like just bring in an interim. Like it doesn't matter.
Oh boy.
Like bring in literally anybody else because what they had this year doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? Like
So this is maybe where the big oversight is right now. They clearly, from this article, are saying we've screwed up in player development in minor leagues, but they haven't yet acknowledged the issues at the major league level. My counter, and I think we've talked about this before, is what about Jordan Walker? What about Nolan Gorman? What about Lars Nootbaar? What about, to an extent, Brendan Donovan? What about Dylan Carlson? What about Tyler O'Neill? What about these guys who come up to the major leagues? They have one really good season with the major league club, and then they fall off and they can't figure it out. That to me might be a little bit player development, but it also to me sounds like your major league staff can't keep these guys in place. They can't help them. And it's weird because some of that was Jeff Albert era, but also Jeff Albert gets credit for a lot of it improving. And then Turner Ward comes in and there's major regression across the board. We saw it this year. The veteran bats regressed and the young bats regressed. The only three guys that really got better, Wilson Contreras, awesome. Mason Wynn, but like it's even tapered off a little bit. And Alec Burleson, who had a terrible second half. And he's kind of like the Dylan Carlson thing or the Tyler O'Neill thing, Nolan Gorman thing, where he started off really hot and fell off. That to me says you need to change the major league coaching staff. This is the part with the Chaim Bloom thing that if they don't have a plan for Mo afterward, where 2025 could get weird at the major league level, is that if you don't have the next guy in place and you're waiting to make those decisions for a full year, that's a wasted year of development at the major league level for those major league guys. You might be overhauling what you're doing in the minors, which is super important, but why don't you have a plan for the major league level yet? That's concerning to me. So I don't really know what else to do with that. She did say again, though, it's the majority of the staff. So it doesn't mean that everyone's coming back. And just because there's mutual interest, there's mutual interest between, or the Cardinals wanted Jeff Albert back in the day, and he said no. So Turner Ward might be like, I'm out of here. But we'll see on that. But mutual interest implies both sides are interested in this. Maybe they at least expand the coaching staff again, which would be really helpful. But I don't know, man. I'm at a loss for words at that one. So anything else you want to add on the coaches?
get rid of them all except for Stubby Clapp. I like Stubby Clapp.
I do like Stubby. So keep
and
Stubby.
Ollie.
Yeah, and I don't mind Ollie being there for an interim year. I think he did a good job this year. So, and also if Bloom, I mean, if they Bloom is next time, Bloom
I like the Scalzo too.
Yeah.
Everyone else can go. Get them all out of here.
It makes so much sense to me to bring in Albert Pujols. I'm going to keep saying it. Like, even if he's a part of the coaching staff in like a hitting coach capacity, I think it makes so much sense. And then he's probably the manager long term. But hey, let's talk about the last thing, and then again, we'll have more meat on the bone. I mean, I saw John Denton just posted something. Derek Gould has his story. Jeff Jones, I'm sure, will have some stuff soon. But what does this mean for Wilson Contreras, Sonny Gray, Nolan Arenado, and Paul Goldschmidt? So
Paul Goldschmidt's gone.
Yeah, that to me makes sense, but it's not confirmed yet. But here, one last quote from Katie's piece. So basically, Gould's an impending free agent. I guess Helsley we need to throw in the mix too. Helsley, someone they could deal. But she specifically talked about how Nolan Arenado, Sonny Gray, and Wilson Contreras all signed with the Cardinals with the intention of being a part of a winning team and trying to win. And if the Cardinals are actively going in the other direction, all three of them, or one, or just a couple of them, may decide they don't want to be here anymore. So she did say it's not apparent if the Cardinals' plans will impact that, like their feelings, but discussions will be had, likely in the beginning of the offseason, to better gauge where each player stands. So to me, what that says is they're going to talk to Sonny Gray, they're going to talk to Wilson Contreras, and they're going to talk to Nolan Arenado about whether or not they want to be here. Okay, Sonny Gray is from Nashville, which is close to St. Louis. So if he wants to stay near Nashville, the only two places he could go would be Atlanta or Cincinnati. Wilson Contreras, though, and Nolan Arenado were both very vocal after the home opener about how they want to win and they think the front office should be about winning. If the front office is going in the other direction, do you think Wilson Contreras and Nolan Arenado will get traded? I'm starting to think yes.
I think Wilson Contreras might just be gone because the Cardinals don't like people that would speak out against them. I thought that ever since he said that, and I was like, I don't know. I think it makes sense if you want to go with Ivan Herrera and Pedro Pajes as your catching core going forward. I think if you're going to go full youth movement, that works.
Yeah.
Nolan Arenado, can you move his contract at this point? I don't know.
That's going to
Hopefully,
be tough.
Dodgers, take him. I
Yeah.
don't care, right? Like, he'll probably thrive in that organization a lot more. The attention's on Shohei. Mookie and Freddie seem to be the clubhouse leaders. He doesn't really have to do any of that.
Yeah.
So
Also, it's fair. So next year he makes 32 million, 27 million the year after, and then 15 million in his final year. And the Rockies are paying 5 million of those two numbers. So technically what the Cardinals would have to try and move is 27 million and then $22 million the next 2 years and then 15 million, which is still not great. But if they pay down another 10 million of it or 5 million per year, that's like a 22 million next year, 12 or like 12 million the year after, and then 15 million. Like that's not terrible to move for like a Dodgers. So I feel like with Arenado, you're not going to get anything in return. But if the Cardinals pay down some of that money, I think they can make something work. But he has a no trade clause, so he will dictate where he goes.
I mean, he wants to probably go back home, right?
Yeah,
I
which
don't think
also
he's going to the Angels.
yeah, no way. But if I mean, I think you make a good point. Like the Dodgers make sense because all the attention is on Shohei, Yamamoto, Freddie Freeman, Hiroki Sasaki when they inevitably get him. Like the attention, like when did Arenado thrive? It's when Paul Goldschmidt has MVP or an Albert Pujols was there. So if
What
you
if
put
the Cardinals got Roki Sasaki? Chaim Bloom likes Yoshida
hey,
enough to sign him. So
that's true, maybe. But if you can move Arenado, I think the Dodgers make a lot of sense. I do think Wilson Contreras, like Loki, has a ton of trade value. Like that dude makes only $18 million a year. And with how good his bat is, that bat should be making 25 to 30 million a year. So I think you can trade Wilson Contreras to a contender like the Houston Astros or the Seattle Mariners who need a bat desperately. And he could be a catcher for a team. He could be a first baseman. He could be a DH. He could be an outfielder. He could be multiple of those things. I think Wilson Contreras would have some trade value in the open market. I think Sonny Gray also would have some, but I think you have to pay down some of the contract to get anything significant. But I don't know Wilson if you have to pay down much to get something good. Arenado, I don't think you can get anything though.
See, if the Dodgers are the only team Arenado will go to, Max Muncy has accrued more B WAR this season than Arenado, and he's only played 71 games.
So
there you go. And he has
so
a team option for next year. So
that's so bad. Oh boy.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna say I think Arenado and Contreras will be gone right now, at least. Sonny Gray, I'm not as sure about because I don't know if he'll want to go. Like I don't know if he wants to move again. Maybe Atlanta. I don't think they trade him to Cincinnati though. I remember the Diamondbacks made a strong push for Gray. Maybe the Phillies, like those are some teams that potentially could work. But assuming he wants to stay close to home, I can see him wanting to stick around in St. Louis.
But the Cardinals they've had a Hall of Famer in uniform every year since 1905 or whatever.
Hey, bring Albert Pujols in the dugout. You've got one. But yeah, and also I mean, we both said it, but we don't think there's any chance Goldie's back now. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, again, maybe he wants to be home, but like if I'm Goldie, I don't want to be here. Why would I? And why do the Cardinals want him? That makes no sense. Oh man, any other major points you want to go over, Andrew, from this?
I mean, change is coming. This offseason is going to be pretty exciting. Next season's probably going to suck again, but whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing. Change is coming, and we'll know more about it Monday. And I tweeted this out a little bit ago, but today I think was a significant day for fans who've been wanting change. But it's just a step, right? There's still a process. Not everything's going to change today, but I'm excited. I'm excited for change to come. Monday will be another step in that direction, but it won't be all changed by then. The off season and 2025 will also be a part of the process, and 2026 will probably be a part of the process. And it kind of sucks that it got to this point, but I'm excited for a true vision to be formed. And it's easier to look at this team in 2025 when it's a youth movement and you're seeing kind of a vision form for what this team should be and an identity developing, rather than a team that's kind of like year to year, I don't know what to expect from them, and year to year, I don't know what they're going to do patchwork wise. And like, it just seems like a sinking ship. And now they're kind of saying, hey, we got to let this, we got to rebuild. We got to take the L in the ship. We got to take it to the shore. We got to patch the holes and put it back at sea when it's ready to go. And it might take a while.
I mean, the Detroit Tigers, we don't have Tarek Skubal, but the Tigers are doing the same thing. Maybe we go on a run next year,
Yeah.
Talk yourself into it.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't like, this team is not bad enough right now to be a bottom 5 team. I don't think like they're above 500. Like, so, and again, like, did Andrew, if you get rid of Paul Goldschmidt, are you a worse team? No. If you get rid of Arenado, are you a worse team? Not really.
No.
Contreras, yes. Sonny Gray, yes. Ryan Helsley for sure. But I think this team can be a mid to high 70s, low 80s win team next year in a rebuild year. And maybe 2026 is also kind of like that. But again, you start letting the young players play, it's going to look gross at sometimes, right? There's going to be stretches where you're like, oh my gosh, this pitcher is getting shelled constantly, or this hitter can't figure it out. And some of them never will figure it out. But then you're going to have your Randy Rosarina show up. You're going to have your Dulce Garcia show up. You're going to have your guys that start to actually pop off a little bit. I think that's important. I think they will bring back some veterans, and maybe if they're planning to get rid of Gray and Goldschmidt and Arenado and Contreras and guys like that, maybe that incentivizes them to bring back a Kyle Gibson, Matt Carpenter types, because it's okay to have some veterans around, right? That's helpful. But like the way they did it this year was weird. But like to have a Matt Carpenter with a young team, that makes some sense to me. But to have Matt Carpenter when you already have Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Brandon Crawford, and all this, that's kind of weird. But anyways, I'm excited to see change. Again, kind of here's a little bit of a slate of how this next week's going to work on the podcast. And again, if you're watching for the first time, we'd love to let us know if this is your first time tuning in. We appreciate the support. Like and subscribe. Again, it helps us out a ton, and we really appreciate the support on the podcast. I think we'll have a Q&A episode going up tomorrow. So if you've got questions specifically to this, let us know. I think Sandy will be the one answering those this time. Sunday, we'll do the end of our year reviews for each kind of player. And front office personnel, the team will kind of give our player grades and maybe do a little bit more of predictions for Monday. If anything specific we think is going to happen Monday, we're going to go live after the press conference to talk about what happened, the changes, and what's official now. And then Tuesday or Wednesday will be Kareem and Sandy's pod about prospects, which I'm sure they'll talk about how all of this is going to impact the player development and the farm system. And then we might be live again Wednesday as usual. So we'll see. We might have back to back content on the channel, which is kind of fun. So Andrew's keeping busy. It's definitely Andrew really runs the show for the most part. Like it's Sandy and I basically just hop on and talk, and Andrew does the rest. So big shout out to Andrew. Definitely give him some love in the chat. Like for Andrew's sake, subscribe for Andrew's sake, because he puts in a ton of support. And also he's the guy who's if you've been seeing Bernie Mikla's thumbnails lately, that's work of Andrew Wang. So Andrew's a busy man right now, and he's got class too. So make sure to support Andrew on that end. So Andrew, you holding in okay?
Yeah, we're good. I made some funny Oli crying thumbnails for Bernie. Yeah. I think you guys like that. So
oh, it's fun. Well, it's been fun talking to you, Andrew, today. I'm excited about what change is coming. Again, if you're listening on audio or watching later, let us know your thoughts. But yeah, we'll be Q&A tomorrow, live Sunday, live Monday, Prospect Pod Tuesday. Lots coming. But the big news today, Chaim Bloom is taking on an expanded role. Lots of comments from within the Cardinals organization. Lots of changes coming. And we'll be here to cover it on Deal on the Cards. See you guys next time.
Thanks, Katie.